Hello, everyone. Today we are sitting down with a very special guest, Tom Christopher, founder and CEO of the Christopher Group. Tom, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Laura.
Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world, so let's just jump right into it. With the COVID-19 global epidemic, how are HR departments and companies responding?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are the largest HR Agile Staffing Solutions company in the United States, and so we've got the honor and privilege of being in and out of, Fortune 10 HR shops all the way down to small mom and pops, private equity, higher ed, healthcare delivery systems. We're pretty much everywhere right now, and we're getting an inordinate amount of data and feedback about alternative HR solutioning. I think it's a really difficult and weird time. We've never seen something like this before, where there was literally a flip of a switch and production and consumption was brought to a screeching halt for the majority of industries, with the idea that this will pass and then eventually people will need to ramp up again pretty quickly. So this is not following the traditional model of a gradual, decline into or retraction, then recession, and then expansion, growth, and peak. There's no graduality to it, if you will. So the suddenness is really presenting some significant HR challenges. And at the heart of it, and one CHRO spoke to me earlier this week and said, Tom, the biggest challenge we have is we just spent years building our physical plant, buying equipment, hiring people, training them, establishing supply chain, distribution, marketing, and we were growing like gangbusters. And now we have this short-term speed bump that we have to navigate, and it's real and it's here, but we know it's going to go away. And so how do we slow down our cost structure and reduce our cost structure to weather this very short-term storm, but not in such a way that when it passes, we've completely decimated our company or our human capital base. Then we have to go back and rehire all these people and retrain them. So long way around the barn. Another CHRO friend of mine said it best. He said, Tom, I know three things. Number one, this will get worse before it gets better. Number two, it will get better. And number three, when it does get better, everyone will be very thirsty to resume the fantastic growth that we've been enjoying for the last 3.5 years. So from an HR perspective, I think it presents a very unique set of challenges.
Mm-hmm. So any more thoughts on how you see this playing out in the coming months?
Yeah, so again, I'm going to go by what I'm hearing. So in the last 2.5 weeks, I've talked to probably 30, 35 senior HR executives in some of the best HR shops in the world, and there seems to be a very definitive consensus that, number one, in the short term, there will be a serious contraction. And in the markets, both from a manufacturing and a consumption perspective. God willing, the consensus is that likely here in the next week to 3 weeks that the epidemiologists will have enough data, because when you look at the illness and the way it's coming, it's not uniform. It's not evenly distributed throughout the United States. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just going by what I'm being told and what I'm hearing from other CHROs who are watching this closely and what I'm seeing on the news, that by that time they're going to have enough data. And like South Korea, they'll go zip code by zip code. And so those areas of the country that are at the highest risk of morbidity or mortality, or those age groups that are of the highest risk from a morbidity and a mortality perspective, will continue to experience social distancing, quarantining, and anti-spread mitigation efforts. Conversely, those parts of the country where the disease has a far lower incident of morbidity and or mortality, and or populations that have far lower incidents of morbidity and mortality, they're going to be going back to work. Mm-hmm. And the economy will then gradually start growing again, going back to work again, and we're going to see a pretty steady ramp up in the second quarter. And finally, all the models that I've heard presented, and I've seen quite a few, say we should be back up to kind of business as usual by July 1st, August 1st, notwithstanding some unforeseen activity. And again, this is based on what they're seeing in South Korea, which is kind of the model that we've adapted. And we're actually arguably being far more proactive in terms of our testing and our isolation activities. So all the data, all the reports that I've seen, I've heard, I've read, and the CHROs that I'm speaking to are saying, you know, we expect for 2 to 3 weeks to be hunkered down, but after that, pockets of the United States going back to work, and then other pockets as the threats subside that are at the higher risk level, they'll follow.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the best practices that you've witnessed from companies?
Yeah, so I think there's this is a time of tremendous innovation, and it's really interesting to watch. Certainly, number one, I had a conversation this morning with a CHRO, and he asked me a very pointed question. He said, "Tom, are you buying stock?" I said, "Ironically, I am. I put about $300,000 into the market in the last 3 days." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because there's some tremendous value to be had." He said, "Well, we're looking at it the same way from a human capital perspective. What better time to buy?" And he quoted Warren Buffett's famous saying, "Be confident when others are scared. Be scared when others are confident." And he made a point that I never really thought about. He said, "Tom, 3 months ago, we were all in the same war for talent. There were just too many jobs chasing too few people. And of course, we all wanted the very best. And the average best candidate was courting between 3 and 6 offers, or was in 3 to 6 different search processes." He said, "Today, because of the appropriate shutdown, the vast majority of companies have just put a complete stop to hiring." And he goes, and what that means is that supply hasn't stopped. Those people are still in the market. They're still interested in making a change. They've collected their first quarter bonuses. But what it means is that super high-performing, high-potential candidate that had 4 to 7 suitors or companies recruiting them now has none or 1. And they're still keen on making a change. And if they're in certain demographic area or certain geographic areas like New York City, they're now more interested in making a change than ever. So he said, "We are at a minimum doing meet and greets. I've told our recruiting department, continue to recruit, just don't make offers. We want to inventory talent. We want to engage it. We want to get them excited about us and what's going to happen after this is done. And then when we flick the switch and we go back into a hiring mode across the board, we'll have candidates who are pretty far down the interviewing process, and we're ready to move to closure and offer. Obviously, we're using innovative platforms to do that, i.e. video, internet, et cetera, because we're avoiding the contact. But we're seizing this opportunity. We're going to buy human capital just like we'd buy equity." He said, then on strategic positions like HRIS managers or really hard to fill roles, we've said, don't freeze, hire. And he indicated to me, he said, "Tom, candidates that we weren't competitive with 3 months ago, all of a sudden, we're able to get." So in a nutshell, we're seeing the use of technology to avoid the physical contact, but we're also seeing clients who are applying the same discipline that they're using in their portfolio of taking advantage of a down market to scoop up precious high-value securities and equities. They're doing the same thing with human capital. And that's our most strategic client group. And we're starting to see more and more clients doing that, either on a minimum basis of, hey, we just want to meet and greet them and get to know them and start inventorying that talent. So when we get the green light, we're ready to go. But also in many cases, and we're starting to see, again, more of this, clients going, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire for those hard-to-fill positions. What better time than now? So very, very exciting times.
Yeah. So with all that being said, is there anything else that, TCG is doing to help during this time?
Yeah, so I'll close out with this. As you know, we've expanded our practice over the last years. Not only are we the largest contained executive HR boutique search practice in the country, been in practice now going on 23 years, but we've expanded and added other product and service lines, namely interim HR leaders. So these are HR professionals that either in between jobs, hung their own shingle, or retired. And they're perfectly situated to come into an organization and be an interim HR leadership to fill a void that has a start and an end date. We are seeing a rapid increase in requests for that kind of talent, especially during hiring freezes. We're also seeing a tremendous increase in our freelance consulting project manager business. And what is that? As you know, many years ago, we had a lot of clients saying, listen, I'm tired of the big consulting houses coming in. They're very good, but they're incredibly expensive. So the Aon Hewitts, the Deloittes, Towers, and others, clients were saying they're very, very good, but boy, are they expensive, and I'm spending a lot of money every month for a fairly junior level consultant, and or they get in here on a $500,000 project, and the next thing you know, it mushrooms into a $5 million project. So we have created this amazing new service line called Freelance Consultants, where we literally have thousands of consultants that we've identified throughout the country and categorized based on discipline, level, and HR functional specialty that we can place directly into a client on a contracting basis, generally at a fraction. 62% is our average of the cost that one of the big firms would charge, and with a start and a stop date. And oftentimes we don't even charge by the hour, we charge by the project. So it's a fixed price versus an hourly price. Our freelance business is exploding. Clients love it, both before this epidemic and then certainly during it. And then finally, we have off-the-shelf HR products. Clients more and more are coming to us saying, I want a new talent management system. I want a new performance management system. I want a new succession planning system. What do you have? And we have built a very large inventory of building custom models for clients across the globe. So we can pull those products off the shelf, customize them and tailor them to our clients' needs, install them. And typical price point is somewhere in the $200,000 to $400,000 range. And on average, we're running at about a 47% competitive price point. So in other words, the exact same products being sourced and developed by the big, cost-laden consulting houses are almost twice what we're charging, and we're putting a much higher weight consultant on the job. So a long way around the barn, our contained search products, interim HR leaders, freelance consultants, and HR products, business is booming. And clients are loving it, and they're using these as innovative tools to get better products faster at a much, much lower price point. So very excited to continue to bring these to the marketplace.
Yes, that's great. Well, thank you again, Tom, for sitting down with me and talking.
Absolutely. I know we're going to be doing this twice a week now as this epidemic continues to go through its process, and very excited to share the results of our many conversations that our partners are having. I have a staff meeting every morning with my senior equity partners, and we share information about what they're hearing from their CHROs and CEOs worldwide. We culminate that information, and I'm very excited to share that going forward with all the audiences of this podcast. So thank you for setting this up, and God bless everyone, and may they all be safe.